Wastewater Support Committee meeting for Tuesday, August 7th, 2018. We'll call the meeting to order. Don't see any members of the public here, but if there any public comment? Comes one young lady. Do you come for public comment, by the way? Or just?
I'm here for the waste.
Yes. Right. And the topic we're on is public comment, if you had any. If not, please sit down and join us. Okay, thank you.
Well, I'll say something.
What would you like to say? Please
That,
identify yourself first.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm Carol Miller. I'm from Harwich, and I'm on Continental Drive, so East Harwich. There's an issue that came up about for people who have an irrigation system to get their own meters, that's less expensive than hooking up with sewer and using that water. So, thank you.
Okay. So you're just saying that's come up as a topic.
Yes.
I think we're aware of that topic, and that's something that is being looked at primarily at the water department. I think at this point in time, Dan is looking at that, and there'll be some recommendation. I think at some point to say, hey, we recommend you do it this way or that way, or But it is a concern because if you just do it on a water basis strictly, then you're paying for the maintenance of the sewer system based on some water that's not treated. Let's put it that way. Okay? All right, any other public comment before we get going? All right, we'll go to the agenda. We have minutes of July 3rd and July 26th. Might care to make a motion?
I move we approve the minutes.
Both sets?
For
All right,
both dates.
So July 3rd and July 26th,
July 3rd
2018?
I
Yes.
second it.
I moved and seconded to approve those minutes. Any discussion? Minutes are excellent as usual. Thank you very
Thank
much. Any further discussion? If not, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. Okay, next we'll move on to plan discussion and topics for discussion. I think the step-by-step guide is something that Ann and Val have been working on lately. Actually, with Ann, it goes back quite a ways. The intent is to have a guide for those folks, particularly in the East Harwich area, trying to help them identify the steps they need to take and how they need to proceed as the sewer moves forward in the East Harwich area. There was a draft, or an updated draft, that was circulated, at least to this board, in the last week or so. I'm not going to go through my comments, but I have them here, and I'll share that, just pass them on to you. I think that's the best way to do it. Noreen, I don't think you've gotten to it yet, but
No, I haven't.
I think you will by maybe Friday get comments to them. But I guess at this point, one thing I'd like to talk about is just how we're going to use this thing, and I don't mean thing in a negative way, but in preparation for town meeting, we had this Phase 2 implementation document, and it does have a map of East Harwich in it. It does have these cartoons, sewer connection in the front, sewer connection in the rear, and it's got a lot of information in it. Noreen brought to my attention on, I think it's the Board of Health website, that they have their own document going. So the question is, how do we put all that together? Does this, which right now has no graphics in it, intentionally, but refers to some graphics, how do we put all that together with what other people are doing? So maybe what I would suggest is, along with doing the edits of this, if you two, when you're going through this, could look at what the Board of Health has on their system, look at this as well, and give us a recommendation. I could see it going as we print more of these, stuff this in it. I could see it just, this is a freestanding document. I could see somehow we take, and I haven't looked at this yet, but there's some interesting little graphics on there. How do we put it all together? My other comment is, it was great that, I know you had some other folks like Dan and whatnot contributing to this. We need to get the tenses all the same, so it reads like one person, put the thing together. And I also think that in some places in here, for instance, when we talk about the test borings that are being done, it talks about, well, they'll be starting, whatever it is, July 23rd, July 26th. Well, obviously that date is behind us, and as we move forward, we may not get this issued till Labor Day or something, I don't know. So we need to make sure we sort of target a date, maybe it's mid-September, to get this out to the public, and make sure we target things based on that. So that's what I'd suggest, and then I'd further suggest that when you guys are ready, hopefully in the very near future, we could have a workshop with the four of us just to try and get this thing thrashed through, and obviously that'd be open to the public, but that will be our sole intent of that meeting, if you will, to get through that. Noreen?
I just have a couple of quick questions that will help me with my comments. I just stumbled across the health department document this morning. I was actually trying to find a street listing, which it looks like we never got the street listing onto our website, so I'll try to follow up on these things. At any rate, I haven't read this yet. I found it at 7:30 this morning. It's a 10-page document on how to hook up.
Yeah.
So, was your intention, Ann, in the document you've been working on to have pictures or graphics or?
It hadn't been decided.
Okay, yeah, okay. But I'll just go back to Peter's question then. I guess our thing is to decide what the content is, but then how we put it all together. That's really what it
And how we
comes down to.
distribute it at some point.
Right,
I mean, is it
right.
something you drop at every door, is it 650, or is it something you just
I
have
think
available?
the original intent was to post it to the wastewater site,
Right,
and to have the separate questions or headings indicated so that people could shortcut and go to a specific section.
I see. Okay, that would be great.
Very similar to what Eastham did,
Yeah.
and very similar to what many public, state and federal documents do, where there's a shortcut that
Right.
takes you to a section that addresses a single question.
So you can almost see, like the questions down on the left and hook right over
Yes.
to, okay, yeah.
And I had some graphics that I had considered using, but I was checking to see, first of all, whether they were available.
Right, right.
And because there's the whole question of, do we have access? I don't know if some of the ones that we've used in the past are
Okay.
open to public sharing.
That's
Some of them may be copyrighted or borrowed without checking to see. And some of them are not suitable for everyone. My concern was checking some that raised more questions. I knew the Board of Health document was in the works,
Okay,
and the question was, that was readily available because it wasn't a group effort. And so that's fine. And I know both Noreen and I have been going to the public meetings that one of the engineering firms has held, and we're collecting some of the questions from those meetings so that we can determine if there are areas that we've missed or confusion that may have been created by those meetings.
okay,
And we can invite, if we do a workshop, so when we do, we can invite Megan in to join us if we'd like.
I
mean,
think
if
that would
that's-
be
yeah.
exceptionally good.
yeah. So I will send you my comments. I'm not sure if they'll be by Friday, more likely the end of the weekend, because we just have so many documents floating right now
Yep.
to look at. And so we're saying then that will come back here, and then we'll arrange a workshop after that? Is that what I'm hearing?
My suggestion is that you take the comments, at least from the two of us, factor them into the document, and then flip the document back to the four folks on this
Exactly.
committee, and then we'll set a time and a date
Okay.
for having a workshop, if that makes sense. But I do think our goal needs, this thing needs to get out sooner rather than later.
Right.
So if we look at, mid-September as a target, I think we
Yep.
should be targeting that.
I think that date for the workshop should be soon, and we probably should check with Megan's availability.
Yep. So the question is when you can get these comments factored in or whatever.
I can work on them over the weekend, and then Val, you can work on them as well, and we'll exchange documents.
Do you want to make the Friday the 17th, the drop dead to get everything as far
Friday the
as?
17th is the One Cape
Yep.
session, so
Okay.
maybe the first date after the 17th.
And that's drop dead for what? For distributing back to us, or for?
Yeah,
I think we can even do it sooner, but let's have a drop-dead date.
Well,
I can have it
and
by
on the
next week.
17th, you can get it back to us, just doesn't mean, we're tied up in a meeting that day, but so what, we can still get the comments back.
I just
So
want
think-
to set a date.
Yeah, I think you
Yeah.
guys should set the 17th
My
to get it back.
plan
to
is
us.
to get it back to people either by next Monday.
Okay, and if possible, just my suggestion, I would print it out in a non-editing kind of format, just so we can see what it's gonna look like when we're done. And, you know, one of the things is that, and I'm reminded of this constantly in my own situation, that because we have a senior population, using a bigger font is helpful for people.
Oh, this is
No, I
not
know-
the,
no, I understand, but I think
Yeah.
I think at this point, you know, once you get those comments put in, we should
Yeah.
start to see what it will look like as a document itself.
That's
okay.
Okay.
That transition from this to a different format adds 2 days from my end.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just trying to get the flow here. So at some point around the 17th, we'll get a document back, assuming I get my things
And
to
the
you.
burden's on you, by the way, to get your comments in,
I
because that's gonna
understand
be
that,
the,
I
that's gonna be the
understand
pacing
that,
item.
okay. I'll throw my company out as soon as I get home.
Well, maybe they have comments they want, let them read it.
And then maybe at our meeting on the 23rd, maybe then we can set the date for a workshop.
Sure.
Would you like me to just put a line item on that
Yes,
agenda?
Put that on the agenda, yes.
Just so we can at least, not necessarily get into the document, but do whatever business we have to do.
Yep.
Okay. Will do.
Okay, anything else on that at the moment? Anybody else have anything on that? Okay. Next is committee's update on the Board of Selectmen on a regular basis starting September. The concept is that someone, or this committee will report on a regular basis to the Board of Selectmen on this topic. If you remember way back when I was in the board, we started this thing, wastewater moment and all that, and it was just a chance to keep wastewater issues in front of everybody. And so suggestions are made that we start to do that on a regular basis. I will say that we're meeting twice a month, so how much is actually changing on a monthly basis, you report once a month, you know, I don't know, but we could at least have a bullet item, okay, we're working on these things, here's an update, here's this document, that kind of thing. Go ahead.
This topic is very near and dear to my heart, because, you know, I feel that sometimes what we do at our meetings, when it gets reported by other people, no slur to them, but they're coming from their own point of view, and our message doesn't always, you know, get carried over directly from the public to the Board of Selectmen. So even though things don't change so much every month, kind of like the old wastewater moments, if there isn't something brand new, it's still an opportunity to repeat something for an educational purpose. So I would very much like to see these start in September. The chair, our acting chair, would have to contact the chair of the Board of Selectmen to be put on that agenda. Peter, you had suggested that they fall in general at the Board of Selectmen's meeting after our, you know, Tuesday meeting, so that whoever is presenting that month, you know, could bring their topic to us for quick discussion and review. So I thought that was a good idea.
So you're saying the second Monday of the month, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, exactly. So for instance, that was your suggestion, I thought it
Yeah.
was a good one. So our first meeting in September is on the 4th. That would mean that our first, you know, monthly agenda thing with the BOS by that scenario would be September 10th. And that would fall to you, Peter, in Sharon's absence, to contact Julie
No problem.
and to set that up. So for topics, I see somebody at the podium, so he looks like he has a topic.
Well, okay,
Well,
no, but let's, hang on a second. What I would say is that our meeting before this meeting, if that's the date,
Right,
we would identify the things we put on our agenda,
right,
just what we want to,
Absolutely.
the things we want to highlight, that's all.
yeah.
Thank you. Larry?
Great idea. Mine was only just process comments. And that is, I would, if the meeting's on the 4th, I think the next week is too soon, it'd be the week after that, because we want to get it on the agenda on Wednesday for the following meeting,
Okay,
you know, just the timing of it.
I see.
And I'd further suggest that, you know, I like the idea before the public wastewater moment. I think what we found out was, or at least what I really found out was that may have been a little broad for an agenda item. And I think you're better served if you state in the agenda what your specific topic's going to be, and then go from that from time to time.
Okay, so what I will do is I'll take an action to contact the chair of the Board of Selectmen and get a time slot, if you will, the third Monday of each month,
Okay.
right? So that would be September, what, 17th is the first one? And we will identify the topic in a timely manner. Okay?
Okay,
Great. And again, we can put it on our agenda so that,
right.
you know, at the appropriate time, so we make sure it's some particular topic we'd like to talk about.
Would you like me to put a reminder on the Thursday, August 23rd
Absolutely.
agenda?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, anything else on that topic? Next is discussion of future outreach plans, the communication coordinator discussion. I'd ask Chris or Larry to give us an update on where we are at the RFP. You're limping.
Just tired.
Oh, okay, not a football injury or something, or,
We kept him up too late.
and Evan's joining us as well, so.
Yes, Evan Malillo, my assistant. We have, through Evan's efforts, put together a draft RFP. We have delayed the distribution of it. We were hoping to get, we're probably going to meet with Larry afterwards, just to make sure we incorporate his comments, and certainly looking for your comments this evening. A couple of the ones that came up last night from Larry's comments, we probably will take out the dollar amount. I think what we're trying to do is just see what's out there in the marketplace. And I think if we do put in a specific dollar amount for the money that we actually have, we probably will be limiting ourselves in that. And then I know the other comment was to remove the PR piece. We don't need a public relations piece. We need an outreach coordinator and someone to, well, communication and outreach, which I believe is trying to establish. It's been a long time since I took a communications class in school. But I do remember, you know, part of communication is you talk about an issue and then you receive information back, feedback, and then you then process that. So, you know, you need the two parts. One, to make sure we educate, but also to listen to what the folks are saying, so that way we can get a better outcome as we move forward. So we will remove the elements of PR in there. The third one, I'm not remembering what the third one
The
is.
third one was to give us 30 days for response
30,
once the
yeah.
RFP is issued.
Yeah.
Because we're sort of searching for what response is going to be, and I don't think, I think some of you commented to me as well, we don't want to shortchange that.
So what do you think your timeline is at this point in time to get the RFP finalized?
I think
and
that
on
we've
the
distributed, to my knowledge, everyone has that, or you've
Yeah.
had the availability. If you don't have any substantial comments beyond that, we could get it out by the end of the week.
street? So the Board of Selectmen are okay based on those changes?
They didn't disagree with it, they agreed with the changes, we didn't take another
Yeah.
formal vote,
Okay.
but I don't think they're
All
going
right.
to stop that.
Yep, Noreen.
Okay. I had sent my comments to Larry, and he captured 90% of it in his
pretty good,
comments, so I appreciate that. But I did have a couple of small things, and I haven't had a chance to go through the revised documents since it didn't have mine. So the date for evaluation on the original one is actually a holiday, so that would have to be changed.
The whole timeline's gonna change.
Yeah, we got to amend the
Okay,
timelines. We'll do
all
that
right.
today.
Under section 3, the original one, scope of work, you use the word firm, and it seems to me it would be better to be either firm or individual. And Larry and I had a little disagreement. I don't know how the second,
Hang on a second, Evan.
I'm
I
sorry.
think we're gonna use the term coordinator
Okay,
from now on.
right, okay, all right. And again, I haven't seen, there's a lot of documents. I haven't seen the second, or gone through the second version yet. But also in scope of work, there was a line that said that the purpose was to aid the wastewater support committee. And personally, I thought it would be better if it was broader. In other words, to say to aid the town, including the wastewater project manager and support committee or whatever. But I think Larry had different views.
What section is this, Noreen?
It was section 3, scope of work of the original draft. Let's see, it is,
Okay.
it's the first line and on the top of,
Yeah, I remember our discussion on Noreen. I think my part of that discussion was a little bit more nuanced than that. I think ultimately, we need to, basically what we're talking about is reporting, how this coordinator will report. And the discussion was to report to your committee, report to the Board of Selectmen. I've had some people tell me it's got to report to the Board of Selectmen. If you recall, nuance would be have it report to the Board of Selectmen through the Wastewater Support Committee, so that you guys get first crack at what's going on, and, you know, ultimately it falls into our responsibility and town administrator's responsibility anyway. So I think we're in general agreement. I was trying to detail the path a little better, so that it comes through here and then goes through the board, because I think that's how your committee is trying to operate, is that you're providing the sort of the middle, you know, the main voice of the town, if you will, and then what you're doing is directing towards the board.
Right.
Shouldn't it be that the departments are involved as well, because they're the ultimate source of some of the regulations?
I agree 100%, and that's why I keep going back to this role of this position is communication and also coordinator, that they would, one of the main roles would be to coordinate all the activities of the departments, be sure it's all coming to this group and beyond.
I think the danger is that we have a firm or an individual who takes on this assignment and having 15 different bosses. And so it has to come somewhere.
Right.
And if it's this board, that's fine. We just have to make sure that we follow what the scope of the work is and that type of thing, and what they're tasked with and the deliverables, so that we don't end up with just taking this firm or individual and saying, you know, here's 58 things to go do, have fun.
Well,
you know.
and that's right, and that's what started this discussion, was how do we answer that question?
So
Evan?
if it's pleases the board, I just would like to go over some of the additions under scope of work, and
Good.
maybe this will help flesh
Okay.
out this discussion a bit. So one of the things, and a lot of this is Dan Pelletier, so we're talking about reaching out to departments, you know, credit where credit's due. The successful bidder shall attend all wastewater support committee meetings, and I've listed when those generally are. The first Tuesday of every month, the third Thursday of every
Fourth.
month. It's the fourth Thursday of
Correct.
every month?
We changed it as of this fiscal year.
Okay. Yeah, so that would be new. I was looking at past practice. Okay. And successful bidder shall also attend Harwich Board of Selectmen's meetings to provide an update or announce water topics at the beginning of each meeting. That's something that we can discuss. You know, we were talking about, you know, maybe doing moments instead of
Yeah.
doing an announcement.
You know, it could be that, we just talked a few minutes ago about having this board or committee report to the Board of Selectmen at one meeting a month. Maybe that individual is there at that meeting, and we do that all as one.
Right, exactly.
Right.
That's what, you kind of give them as marching orders.
Because otherwise, I mean, I'm just
But
making
because
this
it
up,
could
but
be, you
if
take
you.
his information and report it to us.
It could be, but I think what you don't want to do is, you know, let's just assume somebody from Cleveland wins this contract. You don't want them having to show up here every Monday night
Right.
and sit there to make a presentation and go home, and that gets to be very expensive and time consuming.
Well, don't we want to word it in such a way so that we don't get somebody from Cleveland? We get
Well, okay,
somebody
I'm just,
who's on the,
I mean, it may not be somebody that lives in town.
I think the point is, it's a good point. I mean, we're paying a consultant, you know, and it's not gonna be salaried. So, you know, like I put whatever hours necessary in. If you're doing it as an hourly basis.
Right.
Do you want him sitting at a
Yeah.
meeting, him or her, or do you want him coordinating?
Boots on the
So
ground.
I think that you need to figure out, you know, where is that input for?
But I think my point is, instead of like every week making a report, that if they just coordinate it with and came with,
Yep.
say, myself or the chair to make, you know, on every, you know, fourth or third Monday,
Right.
is a segment called wastewater, and, you know, we cover it all there.
so instead of
But
update or announce wastewater topics at the beginning of each meeting, do we want to put coordinate an update or announcement? Is that what we're,
I
so
would
it's more
say-
in tandem?
I would say provided.
Provide?
I would say, and then I would also say that, you know, you'd have a catch-all there. It says, hey, if the Board of Selectmen wants you to come in for something, you're coming in, right?
And I have provide support if there's an agenda item pertaining to
Yep.
wastewater.
That's a good term.
But on that, would we be better to say, provide topics, or whatever the language was, as needed. I mean, I hate to lock it into meetings now. Our needs in 6 months may be different from our needs in October, may be different from,
Okay.
Yeah, let me ask a question. This person, the way you're gonna structure the contract, they, are they gonna be billing the town every month or something, or how's it gonna work?
My understanding, the way I
I don't know
wrote
how
it,
that works.
and then we'll go to how you guys thought of it, I thought it would be, we would set 20,000, 10,000, 30,000,
Whatever number
the
is, yeah.
amount comes up to be.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking of it being on an hourly basis. I'll let you.
Well, I think that, traditionally consultants usually bill on a monthly
Right.
basis. So I think we would just use monthly as the.
My
the
point
term.
is, here's my point. My point is that I think,
But it'd be on a per hour basis. or-
yeah, but this committee, I think would have to have some visibility, because at some point, bear with me, there's gotta be a budget, and there's gotta be, okay, here's how much was spent today, oops, we're getting 80%, you know what I mean, that kind of thing. Otherwise, we can tend to put too much on this individual or firm to get stuff done, and then find out we only got 30% of the stuff done, but we spent whatever we have for money. So I just wanna we need some feedback to say financially how we're doing, so we know along the way.
But if I
And that
may-
can just be amongst us, I mean, it doesn't have to
Right.
be in the RFP.
And let me comment on that, if I may. I think your committee will have to be very careful on how you use this individual, because we do have limited resources, and not use them for things that your committee or other department, it's a
Right.
coordination. Because quite frankly, one of the criticisms that the previous committee, that people came to me on the previous committee is that they relied on the consultant too much.
Right.
Right.
And they were not taking their role in doing what they could do as a committee. And
So
so
one of-
by putting this in place, we're really relying on you to use this, where needed, and then continue your role.
And my suggestion is that as soon as this person is in place, at our next meeting that we have here, that person or firm come in and we sit down, and we have a session that says, okay, what is the plan for this person or firm?
Yeah.
For the next 6 months or something, what are the things that need to get done, and how do we see it happening, what's the
Yeah.
timing, so.
So we'll call that a kickoff meeting? and
Yeah, I
I'll
think that
put
would be
right in
kickoff
here so
slash
that,
planning session, whatever, yeah,
Yeah, and
Well,
the
that'll be
other,
helpful.
sorry,
Go ahead.
pardon me. The other question is whether they are paid merely for hours or upon completion of tasks. And I'm a huge proponent of upon completion of tasks, because you can run up hours very quickly, and, I think that could have been one of the reasons for complaints in the past, that somebody said, we'll get to it, and didn't do it. And of course, there's some wiggle room in that, but I think if there's a punch list of things to be accomplished, there has to be some set
Well,
of goals reached.
And then in the RFP, it has to be very clear what those
Yep.
deliverables are, because
Yep.
if you're vague about it, then how do you hold them accountable other than the dollar number?
I'm gonna politely disagree. And I don't know if we have to go into that kind of detail at this point, but to me, the nature of this job is to help the public. It could take 3 hours to help John Smith on this street to satisfy that needs, and it could take 30 minutes to help another person. So I'm not sure, sitting here right now today, if a task can be called completed. How do you ever know that you've served the public, all 650 people? So I'm just not sure. I'm just gonna disagree that I don't know if that should be in black and white at this point.
I take your point, and I think it's a little bit early. I'd like to see what we get coming in, and then you guys work out the details.
Yeah.
I do agree, accountability is critical, but there may be different ways of looking at that.
If I
Okay,
may.
Evan?
So I have provide updates or announcements on wastewater topics at the beginning of each meeting as needed. Perhaps it should be as requested.
Good question.
That way
Yeah.
we have a little bit more
Yeah,
control
good
and
idea.
provide support if there's an agenda item pertaining to wastewater as requested, once again. So I'll make that language change. So are we gonna do, this bid based on an hourly rate instead of a lump sum? Should we ask them to bid?
Yeah, we probably would
based
need
on
an
an
hourly
hourly rate.
rate for the not to exceed. I do think to the point of the tasks, that's an interesting question. I tend to agree with Noreen. We don't know exactly how we're doing it, but maybe one task we could do is to have the person come in, familiarize himself with the CWMP, meet with key stakeholders, kind of get up to speed, and then, you know, how many public interactions they're gonna have,
We don't know.
who knows? So, you know, I think maybe have some element of getting up to speed task, and then kind of as needed. You know, I've been meeting with a fair amount of people, and, you know, it's probably been, you know, probably about a half an hour with each one, and then I think they kind of exhaust their questions. So, I mean, it's not that complex, you know, quite honestly. So I think that there is some element that as the person gets up to speed on this, that they will have. But how many of those 650 are gonna want that assistance is really gonna be remaining.
By the
to be
way,
seen.
once that person gets in place and gets their feet wet, they're gonna come up with what I'm just gonna call their toolkit. You know, whether it's PowerPoint presentations, whether it's, you know, hard copy documents, whatever, they're gonna have based on what the people's questions are, and they're gonna pull out whatever document, you know, along with some other things and say, okay, here it is, you know. They're gonna develop that toolkit, if you will. Evan?
Yeah, if we need them to get up to speed on this, are we requiring that they are up to speed? Are we paying them to get up to speed? I think it would be reasonable to say that, you know, familiarization is a component of this, you know, if you're gonna bid on it.
Right.
So
All right.
I'll put something to that effect.
They actually might want to get up to speed as part of the interview and the bid. I mean, normally, as a consultant, I would get up to speed, and before I was in front of the hiring committee, I would have a document that I had already familiarized myself with what I was bidding on, and I would be bidding on based on the knowledge I'd already acquired.
Great.
And, and who is that committee that will review or interview the people?
Well, I would,
No,
I
I'm-
should
I'm
get-
asking
he's
a
wor-
question.
If the person's working for you guys, then you might as well be the committee.
Okay.
and,
If I could just, before we
Go.
jump into that, for information, I have that the town's existing wastewater support committee meetings can be found at, and I
Yep.
put the Harwich Channel 18. Should a vendor wish to review them prior to submitting a proposal? And I'll change that language to make it more clear that they, you know, should be. I'll make it sound less optional, coordinator.
Wait, hang on. Can I just ask a question, though?
Yeah.
Is your intent that you get, I don't know, 10 responses? Is this committee gonna get all those responses and we figure it out? Or is it gonna be a down selection, or, I mean, I think we're happy to
Yeah,
participate in the process.
I think under the procurement, you know, process that, you know, we would put this out, it's a little bit, depending upon the numbers that come back, we are kind of using a formal process, so we have the ability to go over, you know, some of the thresholds that are in the procurement. But I think having an evaluation committee and have you guys be the evaluation committee and then report who you would like to do the final negotiation and contracting with to me as the administrator, contracting authority, and then submit the contract to the selectmen, unless it's under the threshold, then I would do it. I think in this case, I probably would just forward it through to the selectmen anyway.
Okay, so just to be clear, in the RFP is somewhere, they're going to
Have that-
state
that you guys be the evaluation
that,
committee.
that, number one, this committee will review the applications or the submittals. Then I'm assuming our role will be to down select it, maybe, I don't know, 3 to 5 or something, and then if we want to decide, have interviews, whatever, and then make a recommendation to the town administrator, is that, or the board of selectmen, or both, or whatever. Evan?
Do we want it in the RFP, that this could just be an internal thing that we've?
Well, I just want to know the answer, that's all. I mean, you know.
I think it's good to lay
think
out
that
at the
makes sense.
beginning who's clearly who they're gonna be working for.
And I would say, just my suggestion, but, you know, Evan, if you're the owner of the RFP, basically, maybe you would sit in with us on the interview process, just, if nothing more, to keep it organized, if you will.
Sure.
and I might add to that too, if it was okay with you guys.
I mean, Board of Selectmen should have a representative, I guess, you know.
Okay.
But I mean, if you make it clear who's gonna make the decision, then it's clear who's gonna make the decision.
So
Unless you don't want to, Ann, we got one over here.
Okay,
Sorry.
so I had three topics back, so. When this position was first talked about over many years, just to be clear, we talk about up to speed and everything else, the concept, and we could be sitting here with 6 different concepts. The concept was that this person be up to speed up to a lay person's level. you know, that they know where to get the answer, that they not necessarily be able to answer every technical question along the way, just to be clear. And I want to mention that at the private firm's
Presentation?
workshop yesterday, I was very surprised at the high level of technicality of the questions of the audience. The audience is moving along very quickly. So this person, you know, we don't want them to bog down in this issue, because I realized yesterday the issue 3 months from now is going to be very, very different. You know, what we were talking about 2 months ago, they've learned and they're moving along. So they have to be able to bounce and run, you know, if they're there to answer to the public as the project goes along. Most of the questions were about size of pipes, angles, things like that, you know. They've gone beyond the list of PEs and the list of things like that, so.
Okay, except at that point, they're dealing with the registered professional engineering firm.
Right.
And those are the kind of questions and
That's
details
right.
they should get into. This person should not be telling people what size pipe
Of course
comes
not,
out of their
yeah.
house or what the slope is or something. That's up to the engineer. We have
That's
to make
right.
sure we don't cross that line.
But that's an important point, because I think what we're talking about is local knowledge is not, or knowledge is not understanding CWMP per se. Local knowledge is to understand the town.
That's right, that's
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say.
Who's in, you know, town government, who's the, you know, the issues in town that can respond to that.
Okay, so,
Well, Evan?
Well, we do in this latest draft, have the communication tree kind of broken out, and I'll let you finish your thought, and then I'll read through that and
Okay.
go with that.
okay,
Sorry, Noreen.
so back to the original question, which was scope of work. Can you read me your opening line?
Sure can. Okay.
It was the best
So-
of times, it was the worst of times.
It's envisioned that this coordination effort will be led by an experienced communication/outreach firm on a contractual basis to aid the Wastewater Support Committee
Okay,
providing.
I'm gonna ask you to stop there. All right, so that was my opening line, and we went around the thing. I'm still uncomfortable with that as an opening line, because if this person, all right, so this person hears from the public, do you want this person going directly to your town departments? In other words, saying, well, now we have some health department issues. If they bring the information to us, we don't have the authority to go to town staff and say, we want you to do this, we want you to do that, we want you to do this. We're an advisory board, we don't have
Okay,
that.
but it's our job to collect that information, or get that feedback, and here are the people in front of us that we would give that feedback to, who would be at these meetings, if you will. So let's just pretend it was a Board of Health issue.
Yeah.
I don't know what, but let's just pretend during the licensing or permitting process, you know, things were delayed. Remember in this town, once to get Title V inspections, things were delayed, you know, for a long time in some cases. And so if that was the topic, it would come here. This is a, you know, televised, open public meeting. We have the folks here who had the responsibility for trying to resolve that, and maybe in that case would invite Megan in, you know, if that was the topic. And we present that information to them as we know it from this consultant. And the consultant is here with us.
You know, I've been in municipal government for 22 years, and I get very uncomfortable about the chains of authority. And so I'm a little uncomfortable with me telling directly, not through the project manager or the town administrator, something that should be done. You know, I can certainly work around anything, but I would still say that I would be more comfortable with the line being, instead of saying to aid the wastewater support committee, that it would be to aid the town, including the wastewater project manager and the wastewater support committee. So it would leave us the room for people with actual authority to hand off the things, but that's all I'll say on that.
So this might be a good time to read this communication
Sure.
tree, and maybe that'll work with what you're trying to say. Okay, so this is under communication tree, also scope of work continued. Outreach coordinator shall be the point of contact for the public and establish the appropriate parties to answer different types of questions. Bullet. Town Administrator Christopher Clark for finance and tax questions. Health Director Megan Eldridge for health, septic, and mandatory hookup. Water and Wastewater Superintendent Dan Pelletier for water irrigation project timeline, construction, and installation. CDM Smith for why the sewer system was designed in technical terms. A majority of questions have primarily been on the homeowner side of the project, such as sewer service, mandatory hookup, and timeline. And then I'll save that last question for the end. But so if that's the communication tree that we are thinking about, and that's a question. But if that is, then I don't see an issue with adding town and wastewater support committee to that first sentence.
Okay, Noreen,
No, go ahead.
you okay with that?
Yeah.
Or are you thinking about it? All right.
I just
Ann.
wanted to add, and this will, let's say
I'm not sure
that
if you've seen this before.
a homeowner has hired an engineering firm as to manage their, so I'm wondering if we should acknowledge that in some way. I mean, the engineering firm knows who to contact in the departments, but if somebody hires an engineering firm, which they can do somewhere else in Massachusetts, how does that communication work, and should we acknowledge it at all? It's,
I would probably stay away from that myself.
okay.
Yeah, I think Peter, with his initial comment, I think that makes a lot of sense. This person should be kind of a triage person. Come in, get a sense, where do we go? And once you get into details, and any registered professional engineer is gonna know to go to Board of Health and Water just to check in on these things.
I mean, I think I like what you put together. I would only, based on Noreen's earlier comment, and your comment as well, I'd remove the term firm and say coordinator,
Yeah.
just to be consistent.
I do think, just to that, if the person's gonna be working for the Board of Selectmen directly or for the Wastewater Support Committee, you need to have who he or she's gonna report to. So I think using that just for clarity, the person knows, okay, I work for the Selectmen directly or I work for the Support Committee. So I think that needs to be.
Well, at the very point that, let's just say Larry had an issue and he decides to talk to the coordinator or whatever and sets that person in a new direction. Well, that's not appropriate if that individual is reporting here. It's okay for you to have those discussions and bring it back here and say, hey, we think we ought to go this way. And if we all, come up with a consensus that that's what they do, okay, that's the way we go.
Yeah.
But you're right,
Because
they
it
do
does
need to
help.
know, they do need to know, because otherwise they're gonna get very confused and we're gonna spend a lot of money we don't need to
And
spend.
it ultimately boils down to, at some point, we have to contract and we have to give a certain amount of money.
Right.
And who's gonna, you guys are signing up to oversee if there's money allocated, or the board directly, if there's money allocated, and how is that being allocated, and we need to monitor that.
So it is us that the person is answering to?
That's what it says in the chart.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just
Well, I was
reading the chart.
trying to change it, so I'm, okay.
Well, I think that's appropriate, we're
Yeah.
depending on you to do your job that you volunteered for, basically.
And by the way, that does happen in some other areas. I mean, I know it's making us up a little bit, but, the Conservation Commission can hire an expert,
Right.
to go do something, and that person, in essence, although they don't pay the person directly, but they work for that person, as far as direction goes. So, all right, Evan?
If it pleases the board, I just would like to get a little bit more direction on two other things. So one of the things,
Stop doing that, you keep trying to do your job.
so will the town be providing the expenses for mailings? This is something that came up again. This is from Dan Pelletier. I think that makes some sense. This person is probably working with a limited budget. They're probably being paid a lot. Do we want them providing the mailings, or is the town gonna provide that?
I'll take that. I mean, my answer, if we're seeing them, would be, yes, the town would. I mean, whether they had a firm where they printed a brochure in their backyard, they would charge us for that, or whether they brought it to us and we outsourced it. One way or the other, we're paying, so.
Well, I think
Okay, I was trying to get more of a direct or indirect.
yeah, no, I think there's, my feeling, there are two things here. One is preparation of materials or production of materials. So let's say it's just a brochure that CDM Smith did, I guess, right?
Uh-huh.
And if during this firm or individual's work, they decide to make 15 versions of this or something.
And mail it out to 150.
Mail it out or whatever, but the production of this should be an expense item that they're allowed to expense. Now, having said that, they would need to give, if we're the authority here, would need to tell us, hey, it's gonna be about $3,000, and we'll have to find out from Chris where do you get the money, right? And then the postage should be another thing, because I don't want the person or a firm to come in here and say, well, I can only do one mailing in 6 months because that's all the budget there is, you
Okay,
know.
so.
Let me respond to that too, because I've been beating Chris up, as he knows, forever about direct and indirect expenses. And so, you know, I think no matter how it does it, the cost of the mailing needs to be part of this overall expense of this position.
Okay, so it should come out of the.
Should come out of this budget, so we know what we're spending. We
It
shouldn't
should at
hide
least be
this.
an estimate of what it would be.
I'm just saying that we don't wanna have this, if we say 20,000, then spend another $1,000 that we don't know about, because it come out another
Yeah,
line item.
well, no, look,
It can, I don't care whether the town pays it, as long as it's part of the overall of this expense.
Okay.
I mean, this is still, like, you know, there's certain principles we need to follow, and, you know, anytime we contract for money, there has to be an identified funding source. If we have a consultant that comes in and says, well, I think 650 people should each week get a personalized letter to them, and oh, by the way, you're picking up the cost for that, that's not gonna be something that's gonna be sustainable.
Right.
So I think, to your point, and I agree with this, Peter, that, you know, have the person put together and then present, here's my communication plan where I think we could enhance. And then similar to what we did with the 650 that went out for the people that, after town meeting, accepted everything and approved it, we arranged and sent that out. But I think that needs to be something that they put together and then they submit, so that way we can track and what are we in fact doing.
And by the way, it'd be much more cost-effective, I think, and effective time-wise, if one of the things the individual or firm did was establish all the email data, you know, information associated with all those homes, so that there's a contact, they can just hit the button and send it all as a distribution on a regular basis, whether it's a newsletter or whatever, instead of having to do, you know, mailings like this. Now, obviously, you won't get everybody's email, but that should be, you know, the ones you can get, you should be doing electronically, no doubt about it, so. Okay,
I do have one more I want
Okay.
to let everyone else bring up. Okay, so
you say the best for last?
I don't think so. So, evaluations to be done by town administrator, wastewater support appointee, and selectman appointee. It sounded like we kind of moved that around a bit. How do we want the new language to?
Well, I think ultimately the selectmen need to decide how they want to do this.
Okay.
But what I heard in our discussions was that this committee would do the down-select interview, et cetera, and make a recommendation to Chris. And my suggestion was you be included, and Larry be included, or someone from the Board of Selectmen be included in those.
Yes, I think the wastewater support committee is the evaluation committee with a representative from administration, so I would most likely
Okay.
designate you, and then a representative from the board. Once the evaluation is complete, you narrow it down, then as procurement officer, I would go through the final contracting elements and then submit to the selectmen for final approval.
Not too different on how, you know, if you put a search committee together for a position like, you know, as town administrator or a police chief or whatever, you know, that committee gets all the resumes or applications and whatnot and figures out a way to down-select it and then interview and then make a recommendation and, you know, you
Yeah,
move
we're not
forward
gonna do
from
a
there.
formal RFP.
Question?
Yeah, wait a second, it gets themselves organized, yeah.
Have interviews.
Okay, Noreen?
Just a point of information, I've never been on a search committee. Do we get the the bids blind? Or do we know who the people, I'm just curious how it works.
Yeah, no, in terms of the process, the way I tend to do it on recruitment and certainly in this, let's say we get 10 proposals, those proposals, we'll probably have them submit sufficient copies so everyone gets one.
Yep.
We would distribute it to everyone. Sometimes you have a committee would look at, if someone has a minimum requirement that you be a firm that's, you know, has 5 years' experience, then maybe you whittle down through those. You can have the evaluation committee do that. So you would have the criteria that you're looking for, go through, and then you have, I mean, there's different ways to do it. The way I tend to do it is have people individually look at them, score them on their own,
I
the
see.
top 3, and then you accumulate those,
Right.
and then those are the ones you have a discussion for who you want to bring in and talk to.
So just for logistics, if that was this committee and others, are these done in closed sessions, work sessions, posted meetings? How does it work?
Yeah, because you're a committee, you would have to do it in a posted meeting. Certainly, the 10 proposals could be sent to you, and you could review them, and then call a committee meeting to discuss who you want to come in and interview. But
Okay,
the meeting itself, to narrow it down from the 10 down to 3, first, let's say, that would have to be done in open session.
so during that meeting, do we refer to them as like applicant A, applicant B, applicant C, as opposed to their names?
No, actually, it has to be public.
Yeah, it's
It has
public.
to
Well,
be
I know it's a
Name names.
public meeting, but,
Say Fred
The
Jones.
proposals would be public as well.
When they submit their proposal, it's a public document.
It is.
okay.
And,
I
sorry,
got a
go ahead.
second.
I
Val?
Just real
No.
quick, is this gonna be a 2 envelope, quals and price, or is it?
Yeah, that's what he was just saying, that under the procurement law, they have what they call an invitation for bid, which you lay out the criteria, you review based upon that criteria, and then you can narrow it. The second is RFP, request for proposals, and there's literally 2 envelopes. One has price, so that way you don't know what the price is, and then the other is the quality, and you go through the quality. That's something, the only thing with doing the RFP route is you have to come up with the evaluation criteria ahead of time.
Set in stone.
So this, I would tend to lean a little bit more towards the IFB, the invitation for bid, because then you can engender a discussion. If some people meet the minimum requirements, and bring them in and have a discussion. The RFP route, because we don't exactly know all the scope, how we're gonna evaluate them, I think we wanna give ourselves a little bit of room to maneuver.
Thank you.
I think that the formal RFP route gets triggered once you go over 50,000. Is it a trigger?
No.
No, it's not a trigger. It's
Well,
just-
yeah, it is 50,000, but you could do IFB or RFP, so you
Right.
have the 2 options.
Right.
We would just keep the option of IFB.
Last question.
So we
Will,
won't switch to IFB?
Yes.
will there be a section that shows us, some other projects they might have done, or things like that?
We probably want to put in there a minimum criteria, and the minimum criteria would be 3 projects over the last 5 years.
Right.
One thing you don't want is somebody that did something 25 years ago and now
I
is
just
getting
want to
back
be
into
able to get a flavor of how they write, and things like that.
You can
So
have work
please
sample.
submit 3 projects.
Well, I think it's relevant experience, quite frankly.
Right.
Relevant
you know.
experience.
yeah.
We can come up with
Recent
some,
relevant
we'll come up with some
experience.
minimum ones.
References?
Yeah, that's a good one. 3 professional references.
And I think once you start to see these, in my experience has been, it's pretty easy to say, okay, this goes in this pile, that goes in that pile, because, and by the way, we could get 100 responses or 2,
Mhm.
so. All right, anything else on that? Do need to move this forward.
No.
So the expectation is,
Hang on.
We still do 30 days. We'll talk about it.
so the expectation is this will come back to the Board of Selectmen at their next meeting to say, this is okay, and then they'll move forward,
I
right?
actually took from the board meeting
I-
last
I
night that
think
they
we
were
can move-
comfortable and we would send it out.
Okay,
And that we
alright.
committed to coming to getting the feedback
Okay,
from you guys.
okay, so do us a favor, once you finalize the RFP, just make sure, it gets to our wastewater site so we can send it out amongst ourselves.
And I would request that you review the posting as well, so that it's the same language as the RFP, because the posting has a public relations, for instance, in there.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I think we're all looking forward to this person or
Good.
firm being in place, because it's gonna
Yeah.
be helpful, but
And
it's
thanks
gonna
to
be a
Chris
little bit
Evans
more of a
for
process to
moving
get
this
there.
forward.
So, okay, and while you guys are here, just we're at the table, the next topic is the Dennis Harwich Yarmouth partnership agreement.
Go ahead.
All right, you got, or,
Well, I can take this because it'll be a short discussion. It came up again last night's meeting, and Noreen, you gave me some notes, and I shared some of those. But the board themselves are not interested in reviewing this again until we have comments back from the State House on the specific language.
I see.
Because we have the committee itself, and Chris has worked on it along with attorneys in the other towns. And CDM Smith has used the document from, help me with the towns.
Mansfield, Foxborough, Norton, MFN.
And so we have a template that the legislation is approved before, so we don't expect changes, substantial changes from the draft. But there's not an urgency right now, because it probably won't go to, depends. It may not show up again until session opens in January. The end
Okay, so
story
is it fair to say
so
this
let
is?
me just say,
Yeah, go
let me
ahead.
just complete this. I have Noreen's comments. If you'll send me other comments, I'm gonna forward those on to Chris, be sure he has them. I have some comments. My ending concern I expressed last time and this time is we need to be, and your committee will be an active role in this, as will, DHY and the group there. This, I know I feel very strongly this has tremendous benefits to the town, saving money and, space and all that stuff. But to organize it is going to raise some, quite frankly, some concerns to people. So we need to spend this time very carefully listening to people and then responding to those concerns so that when we get, presumably if things go well, it'll get to town meeting. That's actually when we work out the details.
Sure.
This only allows us to get there, but we need to use this time to discuss it.
So Larry, I'll get to you in a second. It's fair to say that activity on this agreement itself is on hold until you get feedback from the State House.
Chris, you?
Yeah, I think best way to characterize this is that the special legislation allows for the creation of an entity.
Right.
And that entity has to be within the scope of statute.
Yep.
So what this legislation really does is it creates the entity and it gives us an essential scope. For instance, each town would be represented in their governance. How that representation occurs and the details of that representation, exactly what Larry's saying, I agree 100%, is going to be the next document, which you have to have an entity created in order to then put together the articles of organization, for lack of a better term. And it's that 25-page, similar to the IMA with Chatham, that the details will be in there. And it's that, once that document is completed, that 25-page document, that would go to town meeting. So, we haven't even really started to get into that yet. And I think we need to make sure that the legislature, it's their baby, it's their bailiwick.
Sure.
So we need their feedback and what they want to see, and then once that gets adopted. I did find out just in the MFN that they were able to do that. The legislation gets submitted and they don't need a formal House session. So when they created that entity before, it was done in their informal session. So once we get that wrapped up, that can be submitted, and I don't think they go back into formal session until like January.
Yeah.
So there is a chance that if we can get this squared away, let's just say by September 1, that then we could have that be squared away for, and I think that would be important.
Squared away for, you didn't finish.
To create the entity. So now the state legislature says, yes, you can now have an entity. What do you want the entity to
The
do?
starting point. And
If we do all this other work, 25 pages,
right.
and the state says, well, you can't have an entity.
Right.
It's kind of a process.
I will say that
And our goal,
when we did the IMA with Chatham, and that was only 2 towns, it took almost 2 years to get through that thing, if I remember correctly. Now, some of that wasn't exactly fast-paced, and we took a hiatus at some point in time, but it does take time. Now you get 3 towns, and it can be more challenging, let's put it that way. 'Cause you get 3 sets of lawyers and 3 sets of selectmen and et cetera, so, Noreen.
Okay, so I understand we're gonna wait for some further state information, but I was bothered by this 5-page document. And I sent my comments to Larry, and we're gonna meet and go over some of them because we're not necessarily in agreement, which is good. But I would ask, at this stage, since I'm not gonna look up the Mansfield-Foxborough one of the things that I was in particular bothered about was the fact that it seemed by going down this road that was laid out in these 5 pages, we would wind up with an elected board of sewer commissioners being the expanded, our existing water department, and then this would create an appointed board of sewer commissioners, which would be handling the Dennis, Harwich, Yarmouth, and I thought maybe we should take a pause before we headed in a direction that wound us up with that type of configuration. So I don't know, did Mansfield, Foxborough, Norton, whoever already have a separate enterprise fund with a separate board of elected sewer commissioners.
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with the construction of that. I don't know if anyone else, I'm looking at Val, if he might. In my experience, though, and I think what this document is trying to do is the governance of wastewater for the town of Harwich is within the Board of Selectmen. And then they are planning on delegating, once we get the charter language revised, to a wastewater
Right.
committee. So the governance would be elected officials, and that would be the Harwich governance. That governance, let's just say the Board of Selectmen, would then select an individual to serve on the DHY board to operate.
Fine.
So they're not looking at doing an elected
No,
board
no,
on
but
this.
I was moving, okay, so now we're 10 years down the road, all right? So now the governance has moved to the water, wastewater, 5-member board of commissioners that we've planned to hand off.
Yes,
Go ahead.
I'm with you.
And that's the board.
That's a great question, because the mechanics right now, what's being contemplated and has been tentatively agreed to, we just need to finalize the details, is that the Board of Selectmen, under the CWMP, is the licensing authority or the primary authority. Once the CWMP, any enforcement-related issues, the CWMP is with the Board of Selectmen, the construction of the system is with the Board of Selectmen, and then once the system becomes operational, it then goes over to the wastewater
That's
committee.
where I am.
And it's a great question, because we've had some internal discussions, who should do the appointment to the DHY committee
what I
on
mean.
behalf of Harwich.
Exactly.
Does it always want to reside with the Board of Selectmen, or do we want to transition it to the wastewater?
That's exactly what I was
water committee.
uncomfortable about.
And that is really, for us, that may be a different issue for, well, it's definitely a different issue for Dennis, because their water department's not even part of
Right.
the town. And then Yarmouth is similar to us. I don't believe they have a water commission, they just have a water department. So you have 3 different ways that they are, and we have to look at that language in the secondary document for how does Harwich decide. My thought process, at least initially, is the Board of Selectmen ultimately is responsible for the organization of running the town, and this is an important component that most likely would stay with the Board of Selectmen. If you ask Dan
that's
Pelletier,
fi-
he'd have a little
Right,
different.
and that's fine, but the language,
different answer.
the language in this
Needs to
makes
be
it that it
adjusted
could
to
be
that.
2 separate systems and a few other things, but I'll go over with Larry and.
Okay, good. So in the interest of time, so we're gonna lose a quorum here in less than half an hour. So I'd like to move on. Next one was the land use regulations comments.
Yeah, just, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So on the DHY and the land use, we do have a little bit of a timeline.
Right.
What the land use regulation is it's really a Board of Selectmen created already sewer regulations. This is another chapter, if you would, in the sewer regulations. It is a prerequisite that this be done as part of the SRF funding as we move forward. What this regulation attempts to accomplish, and I think there's only 2 or 3 pages, is, okay, if you have part of your system and you want to make an adjustment, so let's say Sand Lakes area needs to have 5,000 gallons more, and we realize that the Harwich Port area can have 5,000 less, how would you move that? So really what this is they require that you have a process for how you move the areas around, or the flow around. And then secondly, and I think this is probably the key point, when town meeting was told about the process, was told about East Harwich, and that this phase 2, that the flow would not be increased. And this document does create a cap on the amount that we have. So this is a flow neutral, or I can't remember the term of art that they use for this stuff, but this is how we're gonna cap, and then how we move amongst that cap, because what we lay out and what ultimately happens is gonna be 2 different things. It's
Sure.
the nature of development. So this just gives us a process for how things move from one to another.
And
Yep.
Lorraine?
All right. This one I haven't read yet. We've got a lot of documents in 1 week, but I I understand you need comments by the next Board of Selectmen meeting, so I'll get them to
August
Larry.
20th.
But I will still say my concern that this could come back in a year is not from watershed to watershed, it's within watersheds. And, you know, we tell the public, for instance, with Muddy Creek, we tell them, well, we spent, you know, $2 million, but because of that, that's gonna save us $8 million in sewering. You know, that's $8 million, that's, I've heard us say it, that's $8 million less we're gonna have to spend on sewering homes. So within the confines of this document, if we say, you know, we're buying we have a piece of property for conservation, I would hate to see the public wind up in a position where they wind up paying twice. In other words, we spend money to buy land for conservation so we don't have to sewer, and then we say, well, we have excess room in our flow, so let's sewer this new development. You know, so that's all. I'm just trying to avoid the chance over the years of duplicity and spending the money twice.
I
And
think
my only hesitation with that is, you know, you're looking at a plan that's 40 years. And when you look at the maps we put out, what Harwich looked in 1950 versus what it looks like now is two very different things.
Right.
So what it's gonna look like in 2020 and then what it's gonna look like in 2050 is gonna be different. And no one knows what that difference is gonna
Right.
be. So this plan does allow for some growth to occur because it said, okay, if this is a vacant lot today, it's probably not gonna be a vacant lot for the next 40 years, whether it's a house or business or what. And then we have some plan in that for how we're gonna address. I think it more goes to that than, I understand your point, in terms of what goes to conservation.
Just a consideration, we tell people 200 million, but is it 200 million plus Muddy Creek, plus conservation land, plus?
I think that if I may, the additional capacity is already being requested. I think it's gonna end up being a hot commodity. We're not gonna have to worry about, you know, adding in new neighborhoods. It's something that restaurants and other are already inquiring about, so I think it'll be a boom for the town.
Okay, anything else?
I
on that?
would only just, if you will, Noreen and I are going to meet, but get any comments so I can feed them back, because this is time sensitive, because I think Ann,
Yep.
you've mentioned several times, we really want to get an SRF funding break of maybe 2%, best case, part of it 0%.
Right.
And this is a key, this is the one gap that we have going forward. The other key, you know, working together with regions and stuff. And I'll look at it again, but my initial read of this, it does what we want it to do. It reinforces that we have a cap on it. And the cap, by the way, is on the build-out as well, you know, so it's in line with our CWMP. But as Chris says, we really don't want to make it so concrete that we don't have any flexibility in the future.
Yep.
Because none of us knows what the future is. And this allows us, not easy, you know, we're not going to, this is not lightly, you know, some of these changes, we have to go to town meeting and get very detailed approval, so everyone has to go along with it, but we do need some flexibility. So we'll look at it and get comments. We'll, I assume this weekend, so we can get this finalized and get it on.
Okay, also with that topic? Okay, next is update from town administrator. I don't know, we've heard from you a lot, Chris. I don't know if you have anything else to update us
Yeah,
on.
maybe just on the borings are underway.
Yep.
So we did have the maps out there. So I did last night kind of walk through a little bit. And we do anticipate, just for folks that may not have heard of the different vehicles, that we will stay on the side streets during the summer and then on 39 and 137 after September. So that work. The reason for it is just to get a profile of the ground underneath to show how do we make sure the pipes stay in place and maintain the pitch that they're supposed to maintain. I would say, I thought it was interesting last night, Larry was chairing the meeting. We had the non-resident taxpayer session, and we had probably about 12 to 15 non-residents, and we each did a section. I tried to summarize all this in about less than
In
10
5
minutes. So it was a little bit of a challenge. The interesting part, and I don't know whether people are so familiar with it that they didn't really have any questions, or whether it was so much that they didn't want to ask a question, but there were no questions. The other piece, and I'll just wrap up, is on the 6, I have met with the homeowners, and we are kind of going out, trying to finalize the more specific locations to the sites for the easements, so the easements are well underway in terms of that.
Noreen?
Before you go into another topic, during your speedy summation last night, you mentioned the actual street listing, not just the map.
Yeah.
Remember you showed that? And you mentioned it was on the website. I can't find it on the website. I've been trying to track these documents, and I can't find the list of PEs on, you said that was
Yeah.
on the website. So, I mean, there's like 18 places to look to try to find them. So
Okay.
if somebody,
I think Caleb's behind the computers today, or behind the monitor, so we'll ask him to put those on. The material, when I say it's on the website, it was part of the selectmen's package, so it was on there for the selectmen's package
Wow,
last night. So if
yeah.
you look under wastewater, but
Right.
maybe we'll have him cut and paste those from that section and move them over into
Okay.
the
and,
wastewater
and
side.
also, I mean, I don't know if you want to put the professional engineers list on or not. That's up to you,
Public
but,
information, so I don't see a,
I just be
Downside.
careful about identifying firms, only from the standpoint of, you want to make sure it doesn't mean we recommend these people.
yeah, and that's a great point. The only thing is, this is a list of people who had prior submitted for the town to have their plans reviewed. So it's not an endorsement, it's just who's
Yeah,
done business with us
exactly.
in the
Okay.
past.
you know, I understand that. I just want to be, we're trying to be clear about communication. And I hear people saying things like, that's on the website to the public. And then I look and it's not on the website. So I just want us to be clear. Now, you might mean the packet. So if you say
Yeah,
it's in the
it
packet.
is on the website,
Right,
it may not
but if
be
you
in
say
that
it's in the
area.
packet, that might be clearer to the public, because if I can't find them,
I can't find it either.
Yeah.
Well, certainly a street listing either under our tab on there.
it's not.
No, I'm just
not.
saying, under
It
our
was
tab.
supposed to be, but
it
it's
should
somehow-
It should be in there, so that people can get to it. Because that's the best thing we can do,
I
is push
missed
them
it
to our
because I,
tab.
you know, of course, look at the packet, so I didn't.
Yeah, we become too familiar with it, that's part of
Right.
the problem. Okay, anything else, Chris?
No, I'll say thank you.
Since Heinz is here, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Future agenda topic, one of our scope of work things for this committee or charges is to periodically review the water sampling program. We don't wanna do that today, but we'd like to get you on the agenda when you're ready, just to give us a presentation on where we are and what we're doing.
Yeah, maybe one thing just on Hinckley's Pond, quickly, Heinz will be doing the RFP, so that would be a good future reference item. And then there's 2 things related to that. We're also doing a little gazebo or a shelter and stairs down. So there's 2 parts to
Okay.
that project through CPC, but Heinz can certainly, I have him tasked to do the
Yeah.
RFP.
So maybe when you're ready, let us know whether it's the next agenda or whatever.
That's fine. Yeah, I came just to kind of see where we were at, where you guys are at.
Yep.
I could gladly put a little summary together on our wastewater sampling program, where we are status-wise, what we did this summer, touch on the Hinckley's RFP, kind of at least present what I have, and then maybe answer questions at the
Okay,
time.
you wanna put that on the
But I'll
next
probably
agenda?
need till, well, we'll have, maybe like October, because I'll be gone in September during
Okay.
your, well, we can talk about dates possibly, but,
You wanna do it in October, is that what you're saying?
yeah. Is it the second Tuesday or something?
It's the first Tuesday.
What's that date?
In October, that's October 2nd.
Yeah, can we pencil that in and then?
Sure.
Okay.
All right, thank you. All right, questions from the audience, it's your turn. No questions? Hopefully you found this informative. Maybe a bit confusing at times, but, you know, there's a lot going on, Yeah, good.
And we are televised, so if you want to keep following us, please.
No, I will say make one comment.
You can stand at the microphone, please, just so people at home can hear you.
It's a lot.
Okay, your name again is?
Noreen,
Noreen, thank you so much for your concern about where the clarification on who's in charge of what
Thank you.
and what's good for the town. I really, your concentration on caring about the town is so important. Thank
Thank
you.
all right, thank you. Anything else? Correspondence or announcements, do you have anything?
I just want to touch briefly, so it looks like on our agenda for August 23rd, our evening meeting is usually a little more concise. I'll mention the step-by-step status of that, just so we can have a brief discussion about whether or not we're going to have a workshop. By then,
We wanna keep that in front of us.
we'll have had, hopefully if I do my job, we'll have had a
Yep.
draft back. And I will mention the Board of Selectmen monthly report, so we can maybe talk about topics, move that along. It's summertime, I can't think of anything else other than I'll just put questions and answers
Right.
from the audience, and that should do it for that one.
That should be fun.
Right.
That should be
And
fun.
I guess so, I'm not gonna worry about the September 4th agenda yet, other than it will obviously have on it the Board of Selectmen monthly topics.
Yep.
And this is a silly thing, but in terms of communication, I was thinking of looking up the cost of those few dollar things that have our names, because the public is asking us questions, you know, the little
$2
paper
thing that
things.
has your name?
Well, you know, a
Or
name
nameplate,
tag for,
nameplate.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
You know, not the fancy ones, but just because people don't know what our names are on TV when they're trying to contact us, so I'll look into that, I'll take care of that. And I don't know if we have anything other lined up for September 4th agenda, but
Do
wait and see what happens.
we want to, at our next meeting, at least get the latest, or whatever version is of the RFP? Did you have that on your list? Not that we're gonna comment on it, but just where we are in the process, I mean, where they are in the
Sure.
process of getting it out. I mean, we should get an update on that.
So, want to do that on the Thursday night meeting, the August 23rd?
You know, they would have to come back for that. Maybe we wait till the next daytime meeting,
Oh, I see what you mean, yeah,
No.
sure,
because Edmund would, you
gotcha.
know, I would assume would be back for that.
Yeah.
Okay? And you two have your work cut out for you
We
getting
do.
that document. That should be your focus in the next, week.
Mhm.
And we look forward to it. And it's all gonna be good.
It's been a good exercise.
Good exercise, yes. Well, you know what, when you go through these things, you always learn something else. I mean, I always find something I didn't know before, and, maybe a question I never even thought of. It seems simple, but it's not so simple, or, there is a concern out there, so it's all good stuff. So, anything else?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to propose that we adjourn.
Okay. Second?
Wanna second that? Moved and
Second,
seconded?
third.
Anybody wanna stay?
No.
All those in favor of going home, say aye.
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 We're adjourned. Thank you very much.
I